Hark back to the early 1990s Afghanistan. 70% of school teachers then were women. 50% of government workers were women. 50% of university students were women. 40% of all doctors in Kabul were women. Taliban turned it all to 0% in 1996. Will 2021 be any different? Moderate Taliban 2.0, a sham. Top focus on To The Point this evening. Good evening, viewers. You're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Chaudhary. Now, the Taliban held a press conference yesterday in which there were women journalists as well, and some of them asked them about women rights. The Taliban said that we are open to women rights, that women actually should have their rights under the Islamic Sharia law. Now, if history stands testimony, then viewers, women rights and the Taliban are oxymorons, opposite to actually each other. Can you trust the Taliban as it turns on the charm offensive? Or should we just go by precedent? Take a look on the horrors between 1996 to 2001.
Burqa or death? The choice is very real, as both have returned to Afghanistan with a vengeance. The Taliban are back, 20 years after they had been evicted from power, and the Afghan women had revealed their faces to breathe in the air of freedom. In the 1990s, when the Taliban had been the masters of Afghanistan, there were strict rules that concerned anyone born a woman. The Taliban enforced their version of what they considered strict Sharia, or law according to Islam. Taliban's assault on women began almost immediately after they took power. They closed the women's university and forced all women to quit their jobs. There were floggings and execution of women on the streets of Kabul that had been filmed, and when these visuals reached the audiences outside, it brought out the horrific reality of what being an Afghan woman meant under the Taliban. Everything was banned. Women were treated worse than livestock. Girls in Afghanistan between 1996 and 2001 were banned from studying, banned from working, banned from leaving house without a male chaperone, banned from showing any skin in public, banned from healthcare, banned from politics, banned from speaking out to an audience. The punishment for breaking any of these rules was immediate and could be carried out by any Taliban official or fighter. Women were flogged on the spot if even an inch of her skin was seen. The same punishment if a girl was spotted trying to study, and if a woman was accused of adultery, she would be stoned then and there. An accusation of crime was often enough to call for the harshest punishment. Amnesty International listed an incident where a young girl's finger was chopped off because she wore nail polish. After 1996, as Taliban clamped down on Afghanistan, very little news got out of the country that was being forced back to the Middle Ages. But reports did surface on how acts of violence against women exploded. Rape, abduction and forced marriage had become rampant. Those Afghan families who could sent their girls to Pakistan or Iran to protect them. In the bigger towns, the Taliban ordered that all ground floor and first floor windows had to remain shut, so women of the house could not be seen from outside. In Kabul, there were a few women-only buses which they could take. The windows of these buses were all covered so that the women inside would not be seen. Under the Taliban, women disappeared in Afghanistan. Without rights, without freedom, without dignity, and without hope.
So wonder now what's going to happen to that beautiful Afghan choir, these beautiful red-faced girls that we've seen singing, or the Afghan women's cricket team, the Afghan women's football team, or viewers. 60% of the students at the Herat University are women. Now, the Taliban says women will have rights under the Sharia law. First, let me take you through what is Sharia law? What is our understanding of the Sharia law? Well, Islam's legal system based on the Quran acts as code of conduct for Muslims. In Arabic, Sharia means the way. Now, this is the basic tenet of the Sharia law. We're going to get a larger interpretation of it through our guest. But what has been Taliban's interpretation of the Sharia law? Women effectively put under house arrest. Women cannot leave their house without a male companion. Women can only work in healthcare and education, which is again if they are accompanied by a male person. Girls aged 10 and over cannot go to school. Homes with windows will be painted over. A woman cannot even go into her balcony. The age of 8 is the age to start wearing a complete chador, where only your eyes are not even visible. There's a little net. You've seen all those images of those blue and those white chadors these women are wearing. Now, no, of course, skin to be shown in public at all, which follows flogging, even if the tiniest speck of skin is visible. Any woman cannot speak to an audience ever. No photograph of any woman can be displayed. I want to cut across right now to our guests. Joining me is Kanika Gupta. She's a journalist. For the last 3 months, she has been in Afghanistan covering the conflict. She was there in the last 1.5 days when Kabul fell. She's only flown back yesterday. Hi, Kanika. She's with me in the studio. I also have with me Zeenat Shaukat Ali. She's an Islamic scholar. Kanika, with your permission, I want to go to Miss Ali first, because the reason, Miss Ali, I want to come to you is I want you to break down for our viewers, because there's a caveat with every line that the Taliban has been using, because now they say that, you know, or they appear to have turned on the charm offensive. It seems to be a moderate Taliban where they say that women will have their rights. And they say under the Sharia law. What is the actual interpretation of the Sharia law, Ms. Ali?
The Sharia law, as you have pointed out, is called the way. It is the canon law of Islam and extremely broad-based. The primary source of that law is the Quran, and the next source is the hadith of the traditions of Prophet Muhammad. Now, if you look at how they interpret and what Sharia law they are following, there are 805 verses in the Quran to do with knowledge, which in Arabic is called ilm, and its derivatives. And the Prophet has many, many sayings that it is the religious duty of every man and woman to seek knowledge. I'm only giving you one quote. Seek knowledge even though it be China. Now, when these people are forbidding girls to go to school and hurting them, I've seen photographs of girls who are bleeding. If you look at Malala Yousafzai, she had to leave. She was hurt because she only wanted to go to school. She was almost killed. So there are girls who are killed. There are children, there are girls, even the, maternity homes have not been spared. So what kind of a thinking? This is a nightmare. Their interpretation of the Sharia will not do, because all over the world, and I think it is time for the Muslim world and the learned and the knowledgeable among them to have an interfaith dialogue where they can understand and speak about what does actual Sharia mean and what are the laws laid down. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. At the time of the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, his first wife, Khadija, was the first woman to receive revelation. His daughter Fatima is a lady from whom the entire progeny of the Prophet comes in. You know what you call Ahl Bayt. Then you have his wife Aisha, his young wife, who led a battle. She was a general on the battlefield leading a battle. That was Aisha. Then there was Zainab, who was in charge. She was a social worker. Then you have Hafsa, Hazrat Hafsa, the sister of Hazrat Umar, who actually had a full compilation of the Quran. The entire version of the Quran was kept with her because it was written on leaves, on stones, on different materials. and it was arranged by the Prophet, which was with her. So women took a very, and I'll give you 100 hadiths where women went to mosques, women prayed in mosques, women participated in political dialogue, and women did everything in the world that every woman should do. She was part of a society, part of a democratic process, gave refuge to men, and she was politically active. The bayat, what we call the votes today, was cast by women at that time. It was a bayat. The bayat used to be that somebody gives a hand and then you put your hand on top, and that means that it is like a vote, that you're casting a vote. So women in those days, I have dozens of records of women which are recorded in my book, and over there you see that women were in no way second to men. They were leading shoulder to shoulder. Hazrat Abu Bakr's daughter Aisha used to carry.
Right.
She used to carry.
So Miss Ali, this is the Taliban's interpretation of the Sharia law. I want to ask you.
Their interpretation is unacceptable. I'm sorry to say, their interpretation is extremely narrow, extremely chauvinistic, very patriarchal, absolutely misogynistic, and I don't think that is an acceptable. Even in Saudi Arabia,
we're going to come, Miss Ali, I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to ask you about what are the countries that follow Sharia law and what has been the most modern interpretation of the Sharia law. I'm going to come and ask you that. But I want to go across to Kanika. Kanika, you were there for the last 3 months. You and I were just talking. I want you to take our viewers through. Do the women of Afghanistan actually buy this charm offensive of the Taliban? Because you told me you were in Kabul and you were in a meeting with these women. And at that point of time, the Taliban hadn't entered. And it is there you got to know the news. And just take us through that experience.
So, no, definitely not. Women are most apprehensive of this new development, and they have been apprehensive since Taliban was gaining more and more ground in the country. So, no, I haven't met a woman who is okay with being under their rule of law. So when speaking of the incident that you were talking about, I was in a security briefing in a government office in Kabul when the news came out that that the Taliban have entered the city.
Who was attending the security briefing? They were all women?
All women, because since with the changing security situation in the country and of course the capital, the security briefing was like, how are we going to facilitate women's coming and going to office going forward? So this was roughly what they were talking about. But then just then the news came out that the Taliban have entered the capital, and all hell broke loose within that instant, when women started hugging each other and crying and saying that it's all over for us and we don't want to go back to living in the shadows. We want to be there in the public life, active, working, contributing to the government, to the growth of the country. And I think it was death of hope right there in front of my eyes.
So within minutes the mood changed?
Absolutely. There was laughing and chatting a while ago, and then suddenly the women have completely given up on the current situation.
So I want to tap into the fear that you saw, because before that, you said, there were women everywhere in Kabul. It was a vibrant, society at that point of time. And that 1.5 days, you say you couldn't spot a single woman on the roads?
No, the only set of women I did saw eventually were near the mosque, but on the streets there were none. But then to be fair, I was only there for a day and a half, so probably that's not the correct assessment. But the very few minutes that I was on the street, I could not find even a single woman. There was a lot of Taliban movement.
So they themselves have faded into the background.
Absolutely. There is this palpable fear inside of them that they would be persecuted for just being
stepping out of their house.
Just being a woman. I mean, not even stepping out of the house. I mean, their flaw or their problem is that they are women.
Miss Ali, if you can, very quickly encapsulate for us the countries which are working under the Islamic code of law but are way modern, following the Sharia, the same thing that the Taliban says that they are following.
You look at a country like Turkey. You take Turkey, for instance. Turkey is, has a very, very good code. It may be a Swiss code, but it follows a pattern of Islamic law. And they are doing brilliantly well for themselves. You have Tunisia, you have Algeria in the, what you call a certain belt. You have Indonesia, you have Malaysia. Even in Pakistan, though, the mindset And I think Pakistan is a redundant country. I don't even want to talk about it. But in 1961, they enacted a law which was called, the Family Law of 1961, which is a very modern law and which has given women many, many, many rights. And that also had ulama, that also had thinkers, that also had scholars who compiled that law and made it imbibed into their constitution. So there are many, many countries in the world who follow this pattern, and which pattern should be followed.
Okay.
Keeping women behind, but you see, you have to understand that the Taliban have always had a repressive philosophy which needs total condemnation per se.
Okay.
Because their ideas, their mindset is taking
It's highly regressive.
The dark ages is taking a country behind in
Right.
a society, behind time, something that Islam never ever envisaged. Islam was born in a certain region at a certain time, but it gave women rights and asked them to move ahead, like with the men.
Right.
But unfortunately, you see, they have always been the soft target.
Okay. All right. I'm going to bring in Kanika for one quick comment because, Kanika, what is really interesting is the Taliban says now that we'll have women journalists, we'll have women, anchors. You've worked with most of them side by side in Kabul. I'm sure you've spoken to some of the local women journalists when, they were free. So what's the sense that you pick up? Do you think it's a utopian concept? Do you think it's just a smokescreen? You think slowly, as the Taliban gains control and when the spotlight slightly shifts away from Afghanistan, all these women right now reporting are going to fade into the background?
I think yes. Why? Because every condition, any freedom that comes with given by the Taliban will always be followed with a caveat, like a male chaperone or a burqa. And as reporters, as women journalists, we understand how impeded that movement can be with such restrictions in place. That is, if they are allowed to go out in the first place. So I really don't know how it's going to be eventually, but I think the women have this massive trust deficit that they will not be, permitted to do the jobs, the work that they like to do, especially if it involves public facing. So I personally believe that this is all smokescreen, and eventually, I think you
wouldn't see any woman.
I doubt it, but then
coming out of her own volition.
Yes, there will always be this fear whether or not I should be out, even though they have repeatedly said that no, there is amnesty for women, no, we will not hurt you or harm you, but there is this massive trust deficit, so I don't think, it will take a lot of time before they find the courage to come out.
I appreciate both you ladies for joining us. Thank you there. Because right now, what you're seeing, like I said, this charm offensive is being built in Kabul. Various provinces across Afghanistan, with that very little news that is filtering out, seem to suggest the atrocities have already begun. We're going to keep a keen eye on all developments. Thank you for joining us. Up next is News Track.